Welcome to the Herald Democrat Sports Podcast. I'm the sports editor of the Herald Democrat, Jason Del Rosa, and you're listening to the latest edition of the Herald Democrat Sports Podcast. We have done it, folks. We have made it. The final week of the football regular season is here. Week 11, if you're counting by numbers, and we have plenty to talk about. We've got teams chasing seeding. We've got teams chasing playoff spots. We've got teams chasing wins to go into the offseason on a positive note. We have a whole lot to talk about, and we will do like we always do. We will start at the top. We will work our way down to the bottom. We will recap what happened last week, what it means for this week, and what teams are looking at doing in the final regular season game. It's crazy that it's already here, but it is here. And we will start like we always do at the top with the Sherman Bearcats as they host Frisco Liberty to end District 6-5A Division I play. This is a 7 o'clock game on Friday night at Bearcat Stadium. Sherman is 2-7 overall, 1-6 in district play after its 56-24 loss against Frisco Wakeland. And Frisco Liberty is 0-9 and 0-7 in district play as they lost to Lebanon Trail last week, 39-18. And so you have one team looking to avoid a winless season. You have another team looking to end on a positive note. We talked about last week. This was a scenario last year with Sherman after they had been eliminated from the playoffs. They were able to pull the upset on Wakeland and then beat Liberty rather handily, 48-13. To get to 4-6 to end the season, to have a second straight 4-6 season. That is not going to happen this year. The best Sherman can do is 3-7, and they want to go into the offseason on that positive note. They have a lot of guys that are going to be returning. It's senior night, and you want to send those guys out in the proper way as well, especially when you have a game like this where nothing's at stake playoff wise. You have teams playing for pride, and that's about it. Sherman's game last week. It's funny because you look at the final score and you go, oh, it's 56-24. That's not very close. But obviously for the Bearcat fans that made the final trip down to Frisco of the season, it seems like obviously every other week Sherman's in Frisco because they are. This was a game that was 14-10 in the middle of, I guess, early second quarter. It was kind of a Wakeland landed the first couple punches, and then Sherman got a field goal and a touchdown catch from Micah Hunt, who's had a really good stretch of play recently. And so Sherman was kind of hanging around, but unfortunately, you had a Wakeland team we talked about. They were fighting for a playoff spot. They were able to clinch a playoff spot with the victory. So they were going to try to do everything they could to make sure that their game this last week was for seeding and not for a playoff spot like it was last year. And they were able to score 3 times in the latter half of the second quarter. And, that turned a 14-10 game into a 35-10 game at halftime. And then they scored a couple more times in the third quarter to really break the game open. But Sherman, like I said, they fought for as long as they could. They put up a good score offense-wise with 24 points. Caleb Orr again, we've talked about with him with the hand injury, with the fracture in his throwing hand, that he would be week to week. He did play 18 of 33 for 269 and a couple of touchdown passes. Randy Nelson had the big day, 3 catches for 114 yards and a touchdown. I mentioned Micah Hunt with the touchdown. He had 6 catches for 94 yards. Kobe Ray Short, 6 catches for 43 yards. Jacavian Hughes leading the way, rushing 13 carries for 69 yards. And just an up and down sort of year in the first year under a new coach, new regime with Josh Allman. They had some moments. Looking at this, I don't want to prematurely give them a win, but I feel like This is a Frisco Liberty team that has really struggled to score. They're not even scoring. They're basically scoring single digits every game. The fact that they scored the 18 points last week was like a miracle, based on what they had been doing. So they give up a ton of points. They are a winless team. They give up a lot of points. They're giving up over 40 points a game. They're barely scoring a touchdown a game on average for the season. So I'd like to say that this is probably a really good spot for Sherman to get 3-7. You don't want to go back to the game against Centennial. I don't know if it would have made a huge difference in the standings. After that, because of the teams that they were going to play. But if you do get the standings again, assuming a win over Liberty, Sherman beat the two teams below it, and they lost to the 6 teams in front of them. And it would be a difference of 1 win from last year. So you want to have the positive momentum. Go into a full off season. Obviously, the big thing last year was with the late coaching change. There wasn't a spring practice. A lot of things got, if they got put in, before school got out because it was super late. If not, you're talking about trying to do stuff with the limited window over the summer and then coming in the fall and really trying to make sure that people can get up to speed in that regard. And of course, it's going to be a realignment year. So that's going to be an interesting part of Sherman's equation going forward as well. So, but I think again, it's set up for them to have that positive note, send the seniors out, and hopefully there's some good feelings after the game as Sherman hosts Frisco Liberty to end District 6-5A Division I play on Friday night, 7:00. Remember, 7:00 game at Bearcat Stadium. The Denison Yellow Jackets up next in their District 7-5A Division II finale. This is a game where Denison is going to head down to Mesquite Poteet. Denison is 5-4 and 3-3 in district play after it won last week 48-22 against Crandall. And Mesquite Poteet, they are trying to avoid a winless season, which would be the first one in school history. They opened in 1990, so it's not like it's a super duper long history, but now we're at the point where that's some 30 plus years, so there's a long history there, long enough that you don't want to be the first team to go winless. But they are 0-9 and 0-6 in district play after they lost 36-7 against Terrell last week. So Denison's path to the playoffs is very clear at this point. Win and you're in. They did what they needed to do. We talked about a couple weeks ago after the game against Melissa. When you're sitting there at 1-3, you lost 3 in a row. But the path then was the same that it was last year. You got to win the last 3. And the Princeton and the Poteet game looked very winnable. The question is, what were you going to do against Crandall? And in this case, Denison jumped to a huge lead. Wasn't really threatened. This game was 28-0 in the middle of the second quarter. It was 34-14 at halftime and 41-14 before Crandall scored late in the third quarter. So again, not really a close game at all. We talked about, just for tiebreaker purposes, Denison had to win by at least 6 points. And obviously they blew that out of the water. So it's set up well for them. And again, we've talked about the injuries that they've dealt with. And they did a heck of a job, again, considering Jack Alleman, semi-game time decision. He had improved. Thought there was a chance he might be able to play. He did not. But again, the duo of Jalen Butler and Jacoby DeHorney getting the job done in the backfield. Butler, 18 carries, 139 yards, and 3 touchdowns. DeHorney, 7 carries for 35 yards and 2 touchdowns. And he also had 2 catches for 70 yards, including a 54-yard touchdown catch on the first play from scrimmage for Denison to really set the tone just a couple minutes into the game after Crandall went 3 and out. The first play was right down the middle to DeHorney and caught Crandall by surprise. and away Denison went. And of course, we talk about the injuries, and DeHorny got hurt in this game, injured his shoulder, and missed, basically the whole second half. He got hurt, late in the first half, and Butler really stepped up, had 2 of his 3 touchdowns in the second half, and Denison had a really balanced effort. Ty Rhodes, 8 of 13 passing for 101 yards, had 2 touchdown passes and an interception. DeHorny with the 1 touchdown catch, and Michael Kennedy, 3 catches for 50 yards and a touchdown. And Kenyon Kelly had a 40-yard catch on a jump ball that helped set up a drive, a scoring drive, and it was exactly how you would have planned it if you were Denison. There wasn't any doubt. There wasn't any, oh God, it's going to come down to the final possession. Are we going to pull out a win? Are we going to win by what we need to potentially? Or are we going to get left out on a tiebreaker? There was a whole lot of scenarios there, but they did what they needed to do. And so now all it comes down to is, can you beat a winless Poteet team? Again, much like with Sherman's situation, you would like to think that they can. This was a game last year that Denison won against a 2-7 Poteet team that didn't have anything to play for. And Denison was really banged up with injuries. They, at that point, they were giving Ty Rhodes his first start after he had to come in relief in the Crandall game. So you had a backup quarterback making their first start of the season. They were so banged up at running back that they were essentially 3 guys that hadn't carried the ball all season. Were the top 3 rushers, and Denison still won that game 30-14. So everything's on the line. I think obviously they know they're in a very good spot. If they do win and Crandall wins or Terrell loses, Crandall's playing Princeton and Terrell is playing Greenville. If either of those things happen, if Crandall wins or Terrell loses, Denison gets the 3rd seed. If Denison wins and Terrell wins and Crandall loses, Denison will get the 4th seed. So all that stuff is still in play. The interesting thing about these games are because Denison, Terrell, and Crandall are all tied coming into this game at 3-3, and Greenville is at 2-4. You have everybody in these games playing for something. Obviously, Melissa and Lovejoy are playing each other, and the winner of that is going to be the district champion and the 1 seed, and the loser will get the 2 seed. But after that, because there's a chance there's a 4-way tie. Is it very likely? No, because Denison would have to lose to Poteet, and Crandall would have to lose to Princeton, and Greenville would have to beat Terrell, and you'd have a 4-way tie at 3-4. But it could happen. So everybody that's in this mix outside of Princeton and Poteet has something to play for. Greenville has to win to have a chance. It may not work out for them, but they have to win to make it happen. Terrell has to win because if they lose and Crandall and Denison win, then Terrell's out. So Terrell has to win. Crandall has to win because if they lose and Denison and Terrell win, then Crandall gets left out. And the same thing for Denison. Denison could not make the playoffs. If they lose this game and Terrell wins and Crandall wins, then they're out again after missing by a game last year. So everybody is very motivated in this district amongst the top 6 out of the 8 teams. 6 of the 8 teams have something to play for. And if you want to say Poteet has something to play for because they want to get a win, they don't want to end their season 0-10, then 7 of the teams have something to play for. Princeton would be the only one that doesn't. This game is on a Thursday at 7 o'clock. It's at Mesquite Memorial Stadium. In case you're planning on making the drive, make sure you go to the right stadium. Make sure you go on the right day. And the interesting thing, of course, about the way this is set up, and we'll talk about this because a couple other teams have games on Thursdays as well, Not everybody, and it's the same goes for this other district that we'll talk about. Not everybody in this district is playing on Thursday. The Denison Poteet game is on Thursday, and the Melissa Lovejoy game is on Thursday, and the Crandall Princeton game is on Thursday. But the Terrell Greenville game is not until Friday night. So we will know a chunk of stuff of information that we need to know on Thursday, but we may be in a situation where multiple teams are waiting to see what happens on Friday, and of course Terrell and Greenville will know if they have something to play for based on what happens in those games. So maybe, I guess, Greenville may know they don't have anything to play for, because if Denison and Crandall win, they're out. So that would be, or I guess if technically Crandall wouldn't be in, because there could be a three-way tie and they would be out in that case. But Greenville would officially be eliminated, even if they were to beat Terrell. So that is an interesting wrinkle to this district as well, and we'll talk about that in one of the 3A districts, because that's going to be something that rears its head in that game, or in those games when we get down there. So big game for Denison, trying to get the third seed. The real simple answer is if Denison wins and Crandall wins, or Denison wins and Terrell loses, they get the third seed, and then they play the runner-up of District 8 5A Division 2 in the first round of the playoffs. That looks like that's going to be White House. That's going to be at White House, because the top two teams are hosts to the 3 and 4 teams in by district. So if you get second place, you're probably going to play White House, and if you get fourth place, you're going to have to play their district champion, who is probably is going to be Texas High. They're going to be the number 1 seed. Moving down to the 4A ranks is actually the one team that is not playing this week, and that, of course, is the Van Alstyne Panthers, because they're the only 4A team in our coverage area in Grayson County. And they finished their season last week because they have the district bye this week in 5-4A Division 2. So they finished their regular season at 6-3 overall and 5-1 in district play after they beat Gainesville 38-14. They get the second seed. We talked about that last week. This was essentially a battle for a seeding between Van Alstyne and Gainesville. And again, Van Alstyne has followed their same script throughout district play. They hold an opponent to 2 touchdowns or less, with the exception of Aubrey, who got 2 touchdowns and a field goal to get 17 points. Gainesville gets up 35-7 at halftime, cruises from there, and locks up the second seed. And they will wait to see who their playoff opponent's going to be after resting up this week. Brady Carson with a big game for the Panthers. He had 6 catches for 131 yards and a touchdown. He also had 8 carries for 63 yards and 2 touchdowns. Excuse me, 3 touchdowns. So 4 touchdowns total for him. Keegan Daly got in on the act with a touchdown run, and Jacob Janet kicked a field goal, and that's how you get to 38 points. Weston Johnson, 13 of 18 passing for 267 yards and the touchdown pass to Carson. Michael Upchurch, 8 carries for 55 yards. And Castor Fonseca, another nice night for him. 4 catches for 95 yards. And again, just what we've said with Van Alstyne the whole way. They've done a really good job these last 2 years. They've been able to beat everybody else in this district except for Aubrey, who is looking to go undefeated in the district for the second straight year. And they stay out of this mess that is behind them. Farmersville has clinched a playoff spot at 3-2, but you have Gainesville and Crum at 2-3. Bridgeport's at 1-4. So the last playoff spot is up for grabs, and if Van Alstyne had lost that game, there was a chance. Things could kind of get messy. You drop down a spot potentially if Gainesville would have won out. Farmersville, like I said, is in that mix I think they have Aubrey this week, so that they would drop out of that. So, but again, you have to give credit to Van Alstyne taking care of business. They've really come into their own here in 4A. Since they've moved up. They continue to make the playoffs. They've gone a couple rounds. And they've just find a way to, they lose a bunch of guys. You kind of say, how are they going to get this done? And they've been getting it done, and defense has been a real big factor. Like I said, in this district, people have not scored on them, and when they do get a second touchdown on them, it's usually in the fourth quarter when it's late and it doesn't matter, and maybe backups are involved. So they've done exactly what they need to do to get to 5-1 in district play. Get second place, and they'll rest up for the playoffs. And we'll see hopefully after this week, who they end up facing. And we'll go from there with them. So that's Van Alstyne on the bye this week. Just chilling, did everything they could do. And now they're just waiting to see what's happening with everybody else. At the 3A level, you will find one of the biggest games. Outside of Denison, there are very few teams that are still trying to lock down playoff spots. But we have that here at the 3A level, and that would be the Whitesboro Bearcats, who have essentially the winner is in, loser who knows, with their game on Friday against Ponder. This is a home game. It's at Bearcat Stadium. Their Bearcat Stadium, not the Sherman Bearcat Stadium. Whitesboro is 4-5 and 3-2 after they lost 48-9 against Paradise, and Ponder faced the other top team in this district last week. They lost 69-12 against Brock, so they are 4-5 and 2-3. Now this was a game last year that Whitesboro won rather easily, 69-29. Ponder is better, flirting with a 500 record. In a position where, like I said, they cannot, I believe they cannot clinch with a win, because there's a potential for a 3-way tie, but so it'll depend on points. Whitesboro is in the situation where if they win, they are in, and they would be the 3rd seed, and then Ponder and Peaster, who are currently tied at 2 and 3, would be in a battle for 4th place, and Peaster has the tiebreaker head-to-head over Ponder. The problem with a 3-way tie involving Whitesboro and Ponder and Peaster is Whitesboro only beat Peaster by 1 point. So if they lose and they lose badly to Ponder, they may be the team that gets left out. So it's very simple for Whitesboro. Win and get in. We said that was the case last week. Honestly, that was the case against Brock too. But last week against Paradise, same sort of deal. But they struggled in that game. Only have the one touchdown, which was a TD catch by Carter Sluter. They also got a safety in that game. That's why they have 9. So they had a touchdown and a safety. But like I said, Paradise is really good. They're still ranked in the top 10. Their only loss is to Brock. So we kind of knew, like we said, those were going to be 2 really tough games back to back for Whitesboro, and it was more than likely going to come down to this game. I thought it might be for seeding, but Peaster, like I said, Peaster beat Ponder, which was kind of surprising to stay in the mix till the end, and they finished with Boyd, who has nothing to play for and is out, and although I guess technically that's not true, because I'm looking at these standings, and I guess if Whitesboro lost to Ponder and Boyd beat Peaster, we'd have a 3-way tie for 4th. So yeah, so that's good news for Whitesboro, is that Boyd has something to play for. So Whitesboro would clinch with a loss as long as Peaster lost as well. So there's going to be a lot of scoreboard watching in that district. Obviously, Peaster's going to be very interested in what's happening at Whitesboro. But you control your own destiny. That's all you can ask for. If you're Whitesboro, and if you go take care of your business, you're in. And hopefully they can do that. And there's a potential down the road for if Whitesboro's able to make a run to the region semifinals, Paradise would be waiting again. So there's that. But I think considering how things have gone this year, kind of up and down. That if they would get back to the region semifinals, which would be for a third straight year, and you take your chances if you can get that far, because you'd have to win 2 playoff games to get there. So we'll see what happens. Again, this is a true. I don't say it's a true elimination game, because obviously the loser might still be alive, but you have both teams going in knowing they have a chance to make the playoffs, and Whitesboro can certainly lock it down and get the 3rd seed when they host Ponder in 4-3A Division I action on Friday night. And then over in the other Division I 3A district that we care about, 5-3A Division I, you have the Pottsboro Cardinals, and they are not in a playoff fight because they clinched last week, but they are in a seeding battle. They are going to host Mount Vernon. This is the key. Well, there's actually 2 key matchups in this district this week, because Commerce and Mineola are essentially battling for a playoff spot. But Pottsboro is going to be hosting Mount Vernon to end district play. 7 o'clock start Friday. Remember, 7 o'clock. Pottsboro is 8-1 after they won, and 4-1 in district play after they won 34-6 against Commerce. Mount Vernon had the district bye. They come in at 6-3 overall and 3-2 in district play. And so this is very simple for Pottsboro. If you win, you're the number 2 seed. Winsboro has won the district already. They have the district bye this week, so they are a perfect 10-0 and 6-0 in district play. If you lose, you get the 3rd seed, and Mount Vernon would be... Well, I take that back. Man, there's just so many things. Because if Mineola beats Commerce, then we have a 3-way tie for 2nd place. But like I said, Mineola Commerce, if Commerce loses, they're out. If they win, they're in, and they would be the 4th seed. So that is how Pottsboro would be, either the 2nd or the 3rd seed, is that if Commerce would beat Mineola, if Pottsboro wins the game outright, then they are the 2nd seed. And then it comes down to a potential, there could be a 3-way tie between Mount Vernon, Mineola, and Commerce. So a lot of stuff still up in the air in that game. Pottsboro had a very strong defensive effort against Commerce, which we've talked about with them, and they're putting up a lot of points. Only had the 1 touchdown in the 2nd quarter of this game. That was 27-6 at halftime. Commerce finished with 114 yards. Really had to grind it out. Had 107 yards on 38 carries. And Pottsboro offensively, Major McBride, 26 carries, 224 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Caden Humphrey, 11 carries for 81 yards, and the other score. And he also was 12 of 19 passing for 149 yards. Cameron Saunders, 4 catches for 62 yards. McBride also with 3 catches for 39 yards. And Carson Butcher with 3 catches for 23 yards for Pottsboro. So they took the first step towards getting the 2nd seed last week by beating Reigns, 2 weeks ago, I guess, again, by clinching that playoff spot. And then last week against Commerce, and then this week being able to do it against Mount Vernon, able to lock up the 2nd seed, keep things from getting messy. I assume, it comes down to points, and so it all depends. I assume that there's no way that Pottsboro would get lower than the 2 seed, although I would imagine since Mineola beat Mount Vernon, if the Mount Vernon-Pottsboro game is close, Pottsboro might still be able to get the number 2 seed if they do it on points and how all that works. So hopefully we don't have to do that math after this game. Pottsboro takes care of business and can go into the playoffs as the 2 seed. So that's obviously a big game from a seeding standpoint, with Pottsboro hosting Mount Vernon at 7 o'clock on Friday in the District 5 3A Division I finale. Moving down to the Division II level and talking about 8 3A Division, or excuse me, we're skipping S&S, and I don't want to do that. That is District 6 3A Division II. and SNS is going to end its season as it hosts City View. SNS is 0-9 and 0-4 in district after it lost last week 55-9 against Henrietta. And City View is coming off a 47-22 loss against Holiday. They are 5-4 overall and 2-2 in district play. City View, if they win, they are in the playoffs. They are currently tied with Callisburg for third place. Holiday has earned the top seed. Henrietta has clinched a playoff spot after the win last week, and so the final two spots are still up for grabs. And the reason for that is because of some tiebreaker scenarios with the rest of the district. But it's looking pretty set for the most part in this district. There could be a crazy three-way tie that could mess some things up, but I don't think that's going to happen. And everybody will take care of that after Friday night. Unfortunately, SNS not in the mix once again this year. We talked about with the small district, you just got to beat two people, and unfortunately, in this case, that did not happen for the Rams. They did play better, at least offensively. I know that score doesn't look it. They did play better this last week. Passing game was a lot better. Daniel Hernandez had 3 catches for 94 yards and a touchdown. There was a better showing, and we talked about down the stretch could SNS do that to get some, the silver lining to, if you're not going to make the playoffs, can you at least show a little something down the stretch? And this is a game, like I said, I mean, if you wanna hurt somebody's seeding, if you want to hurt somebody's playoff positioning, you get a chance to do that. So it should be, it gives you a little bonus motivation, for a season that obviously has not gone your way. We've talked about with some of the other teams that are winless. You don't want to go winless. You want to walk off the field, at least once, with a good feeling, and to be able to celebrate, and what better way to do that in the final game of the season. So SNS will be hosting City View in 6-3A Division II action to end their season on Friday night. All right, so now, after jumping the gun, we can get to District 8-3A Division II, where every game has some semblance of importance in determining the final 2 playoff spots here. We do not have any all-local matchups, but like I said, they all have a little something, so we'll just work our way down the standings. And the first game we'll talk about is the Gunner Tigers hosting Blue Ridge. This is a 7:30 game on Thursday. Gunner is 9-0, 4-0 after beating Leonard 63-0, and Blue Ridge is 4-5 and 2-2 after they won 56-16 against Howe. So Gunner has clinched the top seed. They are a machine, and they are rolling along. They played last Thursday, as compared to Blue Ridge, which played on a Friday. So I don't know if that's going to make a difference. You probably play this game any day, and it probably wouldn't matter. Like I mentioned with Gunner, they've shut out their last 3 opponents. I think the number is something stupid like 245-0 in those 3 games. They haven't allowed more than a touchdown in like 6 weeks. Bell's got a touchdown against them to open district play, but since then, Gunner scored at least 62 points in every district game, and last week was no exception. That was a game I got to do because it was on the Thursday. They held Leonard to 26 yards, 23 carries for 26 yards, 4 of 15 passing for 0 yards, and they put up almost 500 yards despite the running clock in the second half. They were at 49-0 at halftime. They went perfect 7 for 7 on their drives. Easton Overman 3 carries for 82 yards and a touchdown. Walker Overman 5 carries for 78 yards and 3 touchdowns. He was also 5 of 8 passing for 76 yards and 2 touchdowns as well. Preston Tarpley, 5 of 5 passing for 69 yards and a touchdown. Kanan Lemberg, 3 catches for 63 yards and a score. Boston Standridge's lone catch was a touchdown for 23 yards. Colson Woods' lone catch was for 7 yards and a touchdown. And Cade Dotson added a touchdown run. Jordan Villagrana added a touchdown run in the early stages of the fourth quarter with the running clock. And it was what you would expect from Gunner, and obviously that was a key game for Leonard because Leonard finds themselves in this tie with Blue Ridge for third place. And we'll talk about Leonard here in a second. So the way things are shaping up in this district is we are looking at another crazy tie for third place. Because if you're Blue Ridge and you're playing Gunner, you're probably going to lose. And if you're Leonard and you're playing Bells, you're probably going to lose. And if you're Lone Oak and you're playing Howe, you're probably going to win. And that would be a 3-way tie, everybody at 2 and 3. Somebody's going to get left out, and we'll have to see what happens if that's the scenario, the most likely scenario. But you know, if you're Leonard or Blue Ridge, if you can win one of these games, you're in the playoffs. And unless House brings a crazy upset over Lone Oak, which is possible, but you never know. If they're able to do that, then Leonard and Blue Ridge would both get in. But it's gonna be an interesting finish, starting with that Gunner Blue Ridge game that's on Thursday night at 7:30 at Gunner. Again, Thursday night, so pay attention to that. The next game in that district, which has the ramifications that we've been talking about, Bells will be hosting Leonard. This is also a Thursday night game, 7:30 at Bells. Bells is 7-1 and 3-1 in district after it won 59-14 against Lone Oak, and of course Leonard had the 63-0 loss against Gunner. So Bells has clinched a playoff spot. They wrapped that up last week, and now they're trying to wrap up seeding. If they win this game, they get second seed, second place outright. Don't have to worry about any of these potential tiebreakers. Obviously, if Leonard somehow wins and Blue Ridge, you assume that they lose to Gunner, then that means Leonard would be the 3 seed and Bells would be the 3rd seed. So, you know, even though it doesn't look it, you want a better path. Bells has made some really good runs in the playoffs as the 2nd seed out of this district behind Gunner, so you want to maintain that. You've got 2 teams here that have a lot to play for. Like I said, Leonard still has not clinched a playoff spot. Bells did that by that win over Lone Oak. Again, and we hate to say, in typical Gunner fashion, in typical Bells fashion, with how they do things, almost 400 yards rushing, only 10 yards passing. They threw it twice. They got 1 completion for the 10 yards. But as is normally the case when it comes to Bells, they do it on the ground. Put up a huge point total with the 59. And again, they've done exactly what we've expected out of them because outside of Gunner, they've had their way with pretty much everybody else in this district. And this game was no exception. Bryson Thompson, 8 carries, 102 yards and 3 touchdowns. Easton Helgren, 11 carries for 121 yards and a touchdown. Hayden Allen, 12 carries for 117 yards and 2 scores. Jackson Brown added a touchdown on the ground. Bryson Wright returned an interception for a score. And typical Bells performance against district people not named Gunner. That was obviously I would say a huge game for Lone Oak, but a game where they could have helped themselves tremendously as they chase a playoff spot. Like we said, they're going to go into their game this week needing to win. If they don't win, they will be left out of the playoffs. They are improved, but I don't know if they're improved enough to maybe sneak into the playoffs. And Howe is going to be trying to play the role of spoiler because the third game, if you haven't already surmised it by the teams that we've already talked about in this district, is Lone Oak making a trip to Howe. This one is actually going to be on Friday night, and that's where we'll touch back about this being interesting. So Howe is 3-6 and 0-4 after that loss to Blue Ridge last week, and of course Lone Oak 3-6 and 1-3 after its loss against Bells. To touch on Howe real quick, with that game last week, again, this was a game. After the first quarter, it's close. It's 7-3. Unfortunately, Howe's unable to keep pace as Blue Ridge scores 3 times in the second quarter, and then scores the first 3 times, the first 3 touchdowns in the third quarter to really break the game open. Howe struggled offensively on the ground. I guess overall, they only had 89 yards, 32 carries for 12 yards. Colin Murphy did go 8 of 14 passing for 77 yards. Braden Ulmer 4 of 50 receiving with a touchdown pass or a touchdown catch. And Murphy also had a touchdown pass to Ryland Strong. Reich and Cross had 3 catches for 19 yards. And so that's where Howe is. And we've talked about them, obviously. Some injuries have hurt them. Knox Bounce did return this week. So that's a good sign for potentially this last game. And again, if you're Howe, you're playing spoiler. You can keep your opponent out of the playoffs and keep them out with you. You're at home. I know they don't have a ton of seniors, but obviously you've got several seniors that you could give them a fine farewell. And like I said, to keep somebody out. Lone Oak knows they have to win. And again, even then, it doesn't guarantee anything. Although, like we said with these other games on Thursday, they will know where things stand going into the last game. They will know that if they win, there's a 3-way tie with Leonard and Blue Ridge. They will know if there's if one of them wins and one of them loses. So they could be eliminated depending on that, because the Lone Oaks win is over Leonard. So if Leonard wins and Blue Ridge loses on Thursday, Blue Ridge would end up going to the playoffs as the 4 seed because they'd have the tiebreaker over Lone Oak no matter what. So that's, again, I can't it's hard to believe that people wouldn't agree to play on the same day for that reason. And obviously Lone Oak Howe is going to be on the Friday. So that game might mean a whole lot. It might mean nothing. But we'll know for sure after the results of Gunner, Blue Ridge, and Bells Leonard. Like I said, I mean the smart money obviously is that Leonard and Blue Ridge both lose, and that sets up Lone Oak knowing they need to win to force the 3-way tie. In that, and honestly, depending on, like I said, I'd have to double check. Obviously, not involving any of the local teams that I would care about if they made the playoffs or not, because Howe's been eliminated and Gunner and Bells are already in. They may, even if Lone Oak, because that, I feel like that game against Leonard was such a close game. Although the Leonard Blue Ridge game was pretty close, it was single digits. I think it was 9. They may already know that they've been eliminated because of points. I've got to double check the tiebreaker there to see how that would potentially work out. But again, if you're Howe, you have a chance to finish on a positive note. I know things did not go as well as last season when you were able to make the playoffs and all the streaks that you had after dropping down from Division I. But you've got a chance to play spoiler, and so that'll be interesting to see if Howe can do that when they host Lone Oak. That game is on Friday in District 8 3A Division 2. Those other 2 games will be on Thursday night. So that's it for 3A going into the final week of the season. There is very little intrigue for our friends in 2A this week. Just about everything is done and dusted when it comes to playoffs and seedings and all that other stuff. So it's going to be interesting to see how people approach this, because if you've clinched a playoff spot, do you want people to get hurt? Do you risk that on some level? We'll find out. But the 6-2A Division I games that'll be happening this week, we will start. I guess we'll work our way down. We can work our way down. Oh, we have an all-local matchup, so let's start with that one. That makes perfect sense. says the person who noticed that when he scrolled down to the 2A section. So Whitewright is at Tioga to end 6-2A Division I play. Tioga has clinched the second seed. They won last week 37-19 against Trenton. They are 6-3 and 3-1 in district play. And Whitewright is coming off a 33-7 loss against Alvord. So Whitewright is 2-7 and 0-4, and they have been eliminated from the playoffs. Now this was a game last year that Tioga had to win in overtime. You had first place Tioga against, I don't know if at the time if they were tied for fourth or tied for fifth, I guess. I don't remember but it was a very shocking outcome because Tioga had pretty much rolled over everybody in the district. And this was a game that they had to pull out in overtime to guarantee the undefeated district title and to not have to share it. And so if you're Whitewright, I think again unfortunately you're in a spoiler role. The offense again was a little bit better this last week. And I think you just want to go out in a silver lining sense of, hey, can we ruin their Tioga's finish? Obviously it's at their place. Last game for their seniors. Not that there's a decent number of them. But everything in this district is locked up. So if you don't care, if you want to keep people healthy, are some people sitting out this week if you're Tioga? Like I said, you're coming off that game last week. I guess we should recap both of them. So Whitewright goes and has that loss against Alvord at 30 from 33-7. And again, I feel like I'm a broken record, but that's the way these games are going. This is a game that is 7-7 in the early stages of the second quarter, and even at halftime, it's 20-7. It's not out of reach. Unfortunately, Whitewright's unable to put anything more on the board. They finished with about 160-ish yards of offense, a majority of that on the ground. Kenneth York, 9 carries for 47 yards. Colt Yancey, 9 carries for 37 yards. He has the touchdown run. Gage Walker, 5 catches for 27 yards. And like I said, it was a game for a quarter and a half leading into halftime, but unfortunately, Whitewright's unable to keep pace. And then Tioga goes on the road, has a chance to clinch a playoff spot because the district was kind of so close. And then there's the whole Tom Bean thing, which we'll talk about with Tom Bean in a second. But they knew if they won, they would clinch a playoff spot. So they do that by the 37-19 score. Gage Anderson, 3 carries for 42 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also had 2 catches for 37 yards and a score. Hayden Hilliard, 24 of 32 passing for 343 yards with 3 touchdowns and an interception. Johnny Dorpinghouse, 7 catches for 112 yards and a touchdown. Austin Norwood, 5 catches for 81 yards and a touchdown. Slade Babbitt, 4 catches for 79 yards. Did not have a touchdown, but he did have average almost 20 yards a catch. And there was a lot of big plays like that to take care of business here against Trenton. And this was a game that was close at halftime. It was only 16-12, and Tioga was able to continue scoring in getting a couple and honestly, if you look at it there, that's what 20 to. Or Trenton actually took the lead in the third quarter, but Tioga scores the last 3 touchdowns of the game to pull away. They clinch a spot. Trenton also clinched a spot despite the loss. So they're going to be the 4 seed. Tioga is going to be the 2. Nakona is going to be the 1, and Alvord is the 3. And the reason for all that being taken care of in this district is because of Tom Bean, who. I talked about it last week. I don't want to say I called my shot because it didn't happen, but I said don't be surprised if Tom Bean were to beat Nakona, and they didn't beat Nakona, but it was 27-22, and Nakona was down going to the fourth quarter, 22-21. They had to pull that game out, so they could stay undefeated at 8-0 and 4-0 in district play. Tom Bean does lose. They're 5-4, and 2-2 overall in district play. And they're going to host Trenton on Friday night. We mentioned obviously Trenton 4-5 and 1-3. So unfortunately for Tom Bean, and we've said this from the start, they're not eligible for the playoffs, and so no matter where they finish, you just take them out and slide the team up. So under normal circumstances, right now, a lot of these teams would not have clinched because Tom Bean would still be eligible, would be alive, and they would be tied for third place, and they would basically be facing an elimination game potentially with Trenton, because Trenton would be right behind them in the standings. So it would be, if Tom Bean were to win, they would clinch a playoff spot. Unfortunately, they're not able to. So everything has been decided in this district from a playoff standpoint. But as Coach Steve Feck said when I talked to him a couple weeks ago, that they are all about seeing where they would finish. If it was normal, would they have made the playoffs? And so I think they are going to want to play their very best. They know it's their last game no matter what. I think they want to tie for third. I think maybe they want to tie for second if Tioga can lose. I think they want third by themselves if Alvord loses to Nakona, which I think is pretty that would be a pretty safe bet. So I think you're going to get a really good effort out of Tom Bean to finish, and we saw that. Like I said, we saw that last week. Another strong effort, almost knocking off the district champs, hand them their first loss of the season. They're unable to do that, but Bobby Rogers was 14-30 passing for 265 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He also ran 13 times for 64 yards and a score. Hagen Darney's lone catch, 64-yard touchdown. Ryan Dearman's catch was a 61-yarder. Braylon Barrett had 7 catches for 55 yards. Chase Stratton's lone catch was a 50-yarder. Brody Pearson had 4 catches for 35 yards and a score. So some big plays by the Tomcats. Like I said, they were gonna be a problem. They showed it, pretty much leading into every game. Again, I could totally see, if they win, you get a chance to say that you have a winning record at 6-4, which is, I think, the first time since 2008 that a Tom Bean it's either 2008 or 2009 that a Tom Bean team is going to finish the season with a winning record. That means something. And again, we don't know what realignment's going to bring. But if this district either stays the same or changes a little bit, Tom Bean is wanting to make sure that you remember that they are not a pushover anymore and that they're going to be a factor. And if they could have gone to the playoffs, they probably would have. And they're coming for an actual playoff spot when they can next year when they're eligible again. So again, don't be surprised if that goes their way. I don't know if they would be favored or not. And like I said, you don't know how Trenton's going to handle it because they're already locked in to the 4 seed. So if they've got some guys that got banged up this last week trying to beat Tioga to move up a little bit, maybe they rest them knowing that it's not going to affect their playoff situation, and they can get some guys healthy. But it's at Tom Bean again. I think I don't want to call a shot and say a win, but let's go ahead and do it. There's going to be a lot of positivity going on in Tom Bean in the offseason after what they've done this year. And then the other 2A team, Collinsville, down in 8-2A Division II, they are 8-1 and 5-0 after they won last week against Munster 51-27. They are traveling to Chico. This is a 7:00 game on Friday night. Chico is 1-8 and 0-5 after they lost 48-7 against Lindsay. Obviously, we talked about how huge that game was for Collinsville last week. Top 2 teams in the district, both undefeated. Collinsville could clinch a playoff spot, could clinch the number 1 seed with a victory, and they did. And they did that, I hate to say, in typical Collinsville fashion. Although they actually ran the ball a lot this week, all things considered, as they won that game 51-7 or 51-27 in a game that was 6-0 after the first quarter, and then all heck broke out in the second quarter with 5 touchdowns combined, and away they went. And Collinsville was never really threatened after that. They had a nice lead, and they were able to extend that in the second half. Logan Jenkins, 29 of 51 passing for 344 yards, and count them up for me, folks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 touchdown passes. He also ran 15 times for 165 yards and a touchdown as well. He also kicked a 39-yard field goal. So if there were any points scored in this game, he had a hand in it. Whether it was running, passing, or kicking, he had a factor in just about every single point. Colin Barnes led the receivers, 8 catches for 97 yards and 3 touchdowns. Rylan Newman, 8 catches for 90 yards and a score. Reed Patterson, 2 catches for 67 yards and a touchdown. Carter Scott, 3 catches for 45 yards and a touchdown as well. And I think that was a good game for Collinsville to get pushed a little bit. They've kind of rolled over people, especially in this district, and this week should probably be no different. Again, it's going to be interesting to see how Collinsville handles it. They're expecting another deep run, and how much do you risk some guys at certain positions, wink wink, to where maybe you put the game away and get guys out of there so you don't. But again, it's Collinsville. You don't have depth is an issue for every small 2A school, so it may not be possible. But they're in the same boat they were last time. They're going to be the number 1 seed. The district title, back-to-back district titles, is the first time the program's done that since 1993, 1994. But everything's wrapped up. This district has basically come down to this. Munster and Celeste play each other this week. The winner gets the 2 seed. The loser gets the 3 seed. Lindsay is already locked in as the 4 seed, and Collinsville is locked in as the 1 seed. So we know all the playoff teams. We just have that one game to figure out who's going to get it. And I think that should be a good game. I think Munster and Celeste are pretty even on the board there. So that's a look at the 2A teams. And the last team who didn't play last week, but they're back this week to end their season, and that would be Texoma Christian. They're going to play their final game again on the road. It's been a district of road games for Texoma Christian, unfortunately. They are going to go to Bethesda Christian, and this is at 7:00 on Friday. Bethesda Christian is 1-8 and 0-3 in district play. They lost last week, 77-28 against Nazarene Christian. Of course, we said Texoma Christian had the bye. They were supposed to play with a Granbury Cornerstone. And they dropped out of district before the season started, and everybody had extra buys in there. So just to talk about Texoma Christian as a whole, 3-5, 0-3 in district play. Somebody's going to walk away happy, get a district win. I would like to think Texoma Christian can do that, get to 4-5, go into the offseason with some momentum. Obviously, it has not been what they would have liked based on the district schedule. They had to beat Bethesda and somebody else, and unfortunately, their other 3 district games have not really been close to where you could say, well, if they win this game this week, you say, man, if they only would have beaten Azle Christian, they would have gotten the 3rd and gotten into the playoffs or whatever. But again, as a whole, and we'll probably mention it next week, is just the fact that they were back after not playing last year. A lot of young guys, a lot of people that hadn't played football at the high school level, jumped right in, had some early success, got some confidence. Unfortunately, I think there's a chance that the state champion is from this district, and I think another team that might meet them pretty deep in the playoffs is the second place team in this district. So unfortunately, you just kind of got a bad draw in terms of being competitive. Coming out of not playing and being in this district. That's going to change next year with realignment at the TAPS level. So that's good for them. But again, hopefully this TAPS Division III District 2 contest can go Texoma Christian's way. And also too, I don't think they've had a home game in like 6 weeks. It may be 2 months. I'd have to double check it, but because of the schedule with the team dropping out, instead of having home games in district, they haven't had any home games in district. And so that stinks for them. That they're probably going to – I think they only played maybe 2 games at home the whole season. So hopefully that'll get worked out with stuff for next year. But that's Texoma Christian, hoping to finish on a high note as well down at the TAP 6-man level here in the final week of the regular season. So, again, that's a look back at Week 10. That's a look at Week 11. I hope I explained everything as basic as it could be. There's a lot of – when you get down to tiebreakers and points and this and that and there's 7 different scenarios, which in some cases there are, it can be hard to wrap your head around it. But we'll know everything for sure on Friday night. When we'll know a couple things on Thursday, particularly if Denison is going to go to the playoffs after falling short last year. Thanks for listening to the podcast. We're going to do it. We do it through when the last team is gone. So if there's only one team left, wink, wink, that's still playing, we'll have something. It may not be, the long version, but we'll recap what they did the week before and what things are looking like. And we do that all the way through the playoffs till the last team is out. So stick with us for as long as everybody's going, especially this week. Stay warm. I think we're going from one extreme to the other. It was too hot, and now unfortunately it's too cold. If we could just get it right, maybe next week for the playoffs, that would be nice. I think it's supposed to warm up late this week. Maybe we catch that at the right time of day. But I don't know about Thursday. If you're going to a Thursday game, you may need to bundle up. So still stay warm, stay safe if you're traveling, and we will talk to you next week on the Herald Democrat Sports Podcast.